this show will give you a very deep understanding of what is Bitcoin, right? To begin with, and it will also give you an insight into what are the current issues right now, from money printing that's happening in US and all over the world. What is the issue with the housing markets, right, with the real estate? What is the problem with gold? What is the problem with stocks? You were happy, you did your education, you did your schooling, you went to a good college, you got a good degree, people were fascinated with your expertise, you had your clients, you were living a comfortable life. Now why Bitcoin?
CFA Institute is great. They do their research, they do all their work, but there's a very big uh, lack of information in that CFA where they don't teach you what money is. If you stay with Bitcoin, if you keep understanding, keep learning, keep putting in the time, I can't see a way for
Hmm.
this to go to zero.
What is the best possible shortest way you have figured out to make somebody understand Bitcoin?
I didn't have any savings. I was being stupid with my money. I was just spending it on garbage. I was spending it on things that I didn't need. If I got this $100 bill, I had to work for it,
Hmm.
right? The US government or the Canadian government can get more $100 bills and they don't have to work for them. They can print them out of thin air.
How Bitcoin is going to impact our
Mhm.
lives. Real estate, nobody can beat real estate, boss. What is the problem with gold as a store of value?
Let's say you owned 100 ounces of gold in the beginning and
Hmm.
there's 1.75% inflation based on proportions, you would
Hmm.
have lost 58% of your value.
Yeah. What is the problem with real estate?
3D printing changes that, right? We can build higher and higher. The materials are so light, they're so strong. It's gonna improve over time. It's not like it's gonna get worse. Who holds your stocks? Your stocks are held by a custodian. You don't even hold
Yeah.
your stocks.
What is the maximum that Bitcoin can go from here?
I have a feeling that over the next 10 years, Bitcoin is gonna blow our minds.
Hello and welcome to Bitcoining. So, today's show is very special. The show is all about Bitcoin and not just Bitcoin. The show is very close to my heart because I've been trying to bring Rajat, who is there on the screen, on this podcast. Obviously, because of the different time zones, because he's based out of Canada, and obviously, the way you approach. I mean, crypto is such that the moment you try to approach someone, first you just try to figure it out that okay, if it's genuine or not. So it took a little time, but then finally Rajat is on this podcast show. This show is very important from a perspective that this show will give you a very deep understanding of what is Bitcoin, right, to begin with, and it will also give you an insight into what are the current issues right now, from money printing that's happening in US and all over the world. What is the issue with the housing markets, right, with the real estate? Most of the people in India believe today a myth will be broken. Most of the people in India believe that real estate is going to go up forever. No, that's not going to happen, because there are countries where the real estate bubble has started to kind of, those warning signs are emerging, especially in US and most of the developed economies, so-called developed economies. What is the problem with gold? What is the problem with stocks? Is the stock market going to go up forever? Most of the people in India especially believe that the stock market is making its all-time high again and again and again. And now I'm seeing that people from small cities and small towns are talking about it, that if you want to get rich, put your money into stock market. What is the issue with stock markets? Are they going to go up forever? And then the most important part, this show is not about giving you a FOMO feeling of missing out on Bitcoin, or trying to convince you to buy Bitcoin. No, the show is about making you aware about your surroundings, about your narratives, about your myth, about your belief, about telling you how wrong you were. And it is coming from whom? It is coming from a CFA, chartered financial analyst, who is still a chartered financial analyst. And he never knew, and he never thought about Bitcoin, that at some point of time there will be a point in his life where whatever he has learned till date, he might feel, oh my god, I have to start learning everything again. after being a CFA. So, I mean, this is a very interesting story of somebody who is one of the most influential uh, person on Twitter when it comes to Bitcoin. He is one of those individual where I follow. You generally get impressed with my knowledge, that you try and say, Kashif ji, your knowledge for Bitcoin is amazing. We are highly impressed. Let me tell you, even I learn it from somewhere. And Rajat Soni's Twitter handle and YouTube channel is one of them, and I will definitely share the link, and the link will be mentioned in description. And this show is going to be a little longer in terms of discussion, so if you are probably driving, you can enjoy listening to it. If you're in your drawing room, or if you're in a weekend or a Sunday, if you want to listen to this podcast, probably this podcast, you can listen to it on a 1.25x speed. And at the end of the show, I'm telling you, you will be amazed to hear the facts. Rajat, I took a little longer for this introduction. I'm sorry for that, because in the meanwhile, you were waiting for it. I want you to start with this thing. First of all, thank you, Rajat, for this show. And I want you to start with your journey. And the first question that I really want to ask from you is that you were happy. You did your education, you did your schooling, you went to a good college, you got a good degree. People were fascinated with your expertise. You had your clients, you were living a comfortable life. Now why Bitcoin? I mean, now I'm seeing there were two life of Rajat, before Bitcoin and after Bitcoin. So I want to ask you this question: what was that life before Bitcoin? How was it? And how you got affected, I will say, I mean, Bitcoin, how you got affected after Bitcoin in your life. So please, Rajat, over to you.
Great intro. Thank you so much for having me, Kashif. I appreciate it. Look, I'm actually looking forward to this call. I like reaching different audiences from everywhere in the world, and the fact that you reached out to me, I'm very happy. So, okay, so we want to talk about the journey, I guess. So, I essentially started with I started with a finance background, finance and accounting. Spent a lot of time with doing that in school and university. Um, and a lot of details, a lot of things that maybe aren't even necessary. It's all just made up, right? All, if you think about it, all accounting is made up at this point because we have all these random rules, all these random regulations. Somebody's making those up, somebody's thinking of them, and then adding them to the whatever we use. So that's part of it. That kind of messed with me. I didn't really like that fact. I didn't like that pretty much everything we do is made up today. The money that we use is made up. I didn't understand this until about 2021, 2020. But I went to school for accounting and finance. I did the CFA. CFA taught me pretty much nothing about money, taught me everything about investing, taught me a
Hmm.
lot about investing. But the assumption was that the US dollar will survive forever. There's no other future. The CFA Institute is great. They do their research, they do all their work, but there's a very big uh, lack of information in that CFA where they don't teach you what money is,
Hmm.
right? They don't teach you what money is from first principles. So I had to read the Bitcoin standard to learn that. And then, of course, the Bitcoin standard teaches you the standard information, great information, teaches you the basics, where we're going, why
Hmm.
things are the way they are, gold, why gold was valuable. I actually
Hmm.
didn't understand that before I read the Bitcoin standard. And then with the Bitcoin standard, he near the end of it, he pushed you to explore Bitcoin on your own. Essentially, he said, "Oh, this is how Bitcoin can go wrong. This is what can go wrong," and of course, that got me thinking. What else? What could go wrong? What could happen? So I started actually looking at. Say, I'm not sure if most people know about this, but Seyfried Namus, the writer for that book, he has his own
Yeah.
podcast. It's very
Yeah.
good. He goes very in depth. A lot of the things that he
Yeah.
talks about are very, very important. He has
Very
conversations
good.
with all kinds of specialists, all kind of
Hmm.
professionals. Listen to that if you have a chance. But back to this. So I started diving deeper. I started learning a little bit more. I started spending more time. I don't remember when I started listening to Michael Saylor. I don't remember when
Hmm.
that was, but I think he kind of he made it even more confusing in the beginning. So it made me question it even more. But then in August 2023, I feel like I finally reached that point where okay, this thing can't fail. There's nobody who can present me with uh, a logical explanation of why this is going to fail, why this is going to zero. Nobody in the world, not a single person.
Yeah.
People say, oh, quantum computing, but okay, but that doesn't mean it's going to zero. You can move your uh, Bitcoin from one wallet to another. You can use one of my friends who's been in this for a while. He explained it to me in depth. He said you can just move your Bitcoin from a wallet that's secured with SHA-256 to a wallet that's secured with quantum proof Bitcoin. So I don't know what it is, quantum proof protocol or whatever it was. But basically, you just move it. The biggest issue here may be that people don't do this, or they're not
Mm,
tech savvy enough to do this,
mm,
right? That's probably the biggest issue. But other than that, I mean, if you stay if you stay with Bitcoin, if you keep understanding, keep learning, keep putting in the time, I can't see a way for
mm,
this to go to zero. So to me, it was more like the fact that I had learned everything about investing,
mm,
and now I don't even invest, I just save.
mm,
Right, the only company that I invest in is MicroStrategy, and everything else that I have is in Bitcoin. I don't consider a house to be an asset. A house is just a liability. It's a lifestyle choice. You live in it, you buy it, it's worth a certain amount. Of course, it gives you shelter, it gives you stability, but to me, I don't want to buy rental properties. I don't want to get mixed in with that at all. And I
yeah.
think Bitcoin changed that for me. It got me thinking in that way. Before, I used to actually be a realtor for a little while. I was a realtor. I did very well. It's not like
Mm,
I didn't even do well. I sold a bunch of houses, and
mm,
even with that, I quit being a realtor because I feel like it doesn't make any sense to be selling rental properties to someone when I think that the rental properties value is going to go down over time in terms of Bitcoin,
mm, mm.
right?
Yeah.
Because it's very conflicting.
So before we, yeah, before we, because there are a lot of things that I have in my mind. So who introduced you to Bitcoin? What was that point? Were you like, because for me it was my friend, it was very close friend of mine who said, okay, Kashif, just look at this app, this Bitcoin, and it goes up and down. I have made $5,000 on that, you also try that out. So what was that point? I mean, because you were living a happy life, you might not be even aware about Bitcoin, but there must be somebody who got you, like, I mean, look, Rajat, this is what this app looks like. Do you so who was that individual, and when was that time?
So what happened was basically a coworker told me to look into Bitcoin.
That was the
I didn't
year.
even sorry.
It was which year?
So a coworker told me, I believe it was in 2020. It was before the pandemic. It was when Bitcoin
Okay.
went down to $3,500. He told me buy
Yeah,
some.
yeah, yeah.
I didn't.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Acha, you
didn't.
okay?
I told him I'm gonna buy this random stock. I
Hmm,
think it'll do better. This Bitcoin thing is whatever. I don't
hmm,
want to waste my
hmm,
time with it.
hmm,
So I didn't buy it then. But then the price went up. I think he told me about Michael Saylor at some point. I don't remember when it was, 2020, 2021.
hmm, hmm,
Um, I had started listening to his podcast because of him. But this was back then.
hmm,
I think the main thing that really pushed me was somebody posted on Instagram to read the Bitcoin Standard.
hmm.
That's what got me. They
Yeah.
basically pushed me, and I didn't even before that. I was just thinking. I feel like you have to have multiple touch points with this.
Yeah.
It has to come into your view multiple times before you can before you really grasp it, before you even put in the time
Yeah.
to think about it. Because most people,
Hmm,
like on Twitter, there are a lot of people who are just going to argue for the sake of arguing. They
hmm,
they don't want to learn. They don't want to change their views. But then there are people who have an open mind. They have a growth mindset, and they're willing to put in the time to learn about this. Maybe it's
hmm,
something that they don't know about. Maybe there's something there that's missing. There's a great quote that says, I don't know who it's from. It said, "Bitcoin is everything you don't know about money, and everything you don't
hmm,
know about computers."
hmm.
That's pretty much it,
Yeah, yeah.
right? Once you can get over the fact that you don't know
Hmm.
everything, you start learning.
But must have been very. I mean, it's very difficult to visual to imagine that a guy who is a CFA generally believes that he knows everything. He got a degree in it. So he knows finance at the back of his hand. Took this book, the Bitcoin Standard, and because Bitcoin Standard is such a easy book to read, and it makes you humble. You know that you don't know anything. But there are individuals who do not accept that. Still, I know people who say, no, 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 the author is not right here. But it's amazing to see that a CFA why I'm repeating that thing is because CFA will believe that he knows everything. He got a degree in Keynesian economics. I mean, he's the best guy. And yeah, why should I even read this book? But you decided to read that book, and then you also accepted certain things. I'm sure not maybe 100%, but maybe at least a fact that you wanted to learn more about Bitcoin. That's more important.
It's all about curiosity, right? So I read this book called Mindset during the
Hmm,
pandemic. I don't know if you've heard about it. It's
hmm,
Mindset by Carol Dweck. Very good book. Basically
hmm.
teaches you the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
before
Yeah.
that, before reading that book, I probably, if I had come across Bitcoin, I would have rejected it. I would have said no,
Hmm,
garbage, scam. I know everything. I only want to invest in stocks. I want value stocks. I want growth stocks. That's all I care about. I don't want any of this crap. But then after reading that book, I think it made me think about all some of the things that I may be doing wrong,
hmm.
maybe some of the things that I'm missing out on. I was terrible with money up until maybe 2016, 2015. I was so bad with money, right? And I had a
When you say
finance
bad
degree.
means, bad at investment.
No, 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 not investment. I didn't have any savings. I was being stupid with my money. I was just spending it on garbage. I was spending it on things that I didn't need.
Hmm,
I was I I may have talked about this before, but I was buying like $500 worth of just takeout every single month, and it was just dumb purchases. Right? I was terrible with my money. I had this. I don't know what was wrong with me. Just spending money. I had a finance degree. I had an accounting degree, but I was
hmm.
still doing this. And there's a lot of people who are like me. So I was just thinking after reading that book that maybe there's something that I need to change about
Rajat,
myself.
Rajat, there is a chapter dedicated to this buying behavior, low time preference
Yes.
mindset and high time preference mindset. So that chapter is the best chapter for me
Yeah.
in that book, because
Yeah.
that chapter was like the marshmallow, this thing that few children were brought in, and there was this experiment that happened. I
Yes.
mean, that chapter literally blew my mind, that why
Yeah.
people actually spend
Yeah.
without even thinking, and what is that mindset is called. And this fiat standard is that builds that mindset. In gold
That's it.
standard, the people were not spending. People were
Hmm.
literally, there was no need to, there was no urge to spend,
Hmm.
because
Yeah.
they,
That's it.
that's a great chapter. I mean, and what you just said is actually mentioned in one of those chapter. So
Hmm.
Rajat, since now you've got a very deeper understanding of Bitcoin. It's beyond imagination that somebody who started his journey in 2020, and because I am in this industry since 2017, and in 2020, like 4 years back, you started learning about this thing, and today when you write, when you tweet, your understanding of the concept is so deep that even the best of people who have been into this space kind of acknowledge that. uh, but I'm sure when you meet your friends and family and your cousins, and when they ask you, "Hey Rajat, what's up?" So you say nothing. I mean, these days I'm talking about Bitcoin, maybe reading Bitcoin. So they ask you, what is Bitcoin? So in a sense, what is the best possible shortest way you have figured out to make somebody understand Bitcoin? And if you can share that today in the show.
I wanted to mention part of the reason why I was even able to develop this understanding is because over the last 3 years, ever since I discovered Bitcoin, I've been learning about it nonstop. I've been listening to podcasts like yours, great
Mm,
podcast. I haven't listened to many of your episodes, but I mean that's the thing, right? You listen to podcasts, you listen to different people's opinions. I've probably listened to maybe 1,000 Bitcoiners, but the only reason why I was able to do that, why the reason why I had time to do that,
mm,
is because of my wife, my the support that I got. Right, I I basically learned about Bitcoin full time. Right, I was
mm,
listening to podcasts maybe 6 7 hours a day, just
mm,
doing whatever I could to learn more, figure out everything that goes wrong with this. So okay, so the question. Um, I think the best way to really describe Bitcoin is a way to a way to hold value for the future, hold your productivity, because you can't if you go to a job, for example, you can't
mm,
spend that income right away. You can't spend that money right away. Maybe you save it for the future. It's a way to basically give yourself some security for the future, to save your time, to your
mm,
productivity from today for the future. So let's say, let me give you an example. Like I said, if you go to a job, and let's say you have a goal of buying a house. You want to buy
Hmm.
a house, you have to save a down payment, or even if you need to buy groceries, you're not going to buy groceries every day. You're not going to
Hmm.
get paid buy groceries. Maybe you'll save 2 or 3 weeks worth of money to buy groceries, right? Uh, maybe you'll save a few months ahead to buy your groceries over the next few months, right? And that's how you do it. But you do that with money. Money is supposed to be something that you can use to transfer value, account for value, and store value. A lot of people in Keynesian economics try to say
Hmm.
that it's also a way to I mean, it is a way to settle debt. There's another one. It's basically a way to issue debt. But again, I think that's a Keynesian way of thinking. I think a lot of people once they're on a Bitcoin standard, once they're saving in money that actually works, they're gonna be saving. They're not gonna be going into debt. So Bitcoin is that way to save for the future, to
Hmm.
invest in your future, without having to put in your time, to be able to spend your wealth to be able to transfer it to someone else. So like let's say you work at a job,
Hmm.
and your job produces apples. How many apples are they going to be able to pay you for your labor? How
Hmm.
many apples do you need? Right? There's a limit to how many apples you need. So money is that way to transfer, account, and store value, but it also takes care of something called the double coincidence of wants. So what that
Yeah.
means is when two people have historically we used to use a barter system. We used to trade goods and services for goods and services. Um, I'm sure I think there are a lot of references to people um, kind of having a debt based system back then where
Hmm.
people would owe favors, they would owe um, goods and services in the future. Essentially, that was in a way the creation of money. Money is in this situation, money. The way that we think of money as a representative of value is essentially debt, right? That's in my opinion, that's how I think of it. Money like this. I have $100 bill here.
Hmm.
This is debt. If you look at it's from the Bank of Canada. It's good for legal trade within Canada. People will accept it probably around the world. In the US, the US dollar is a legal tender. It's a note from the Federal Reserve. So essentially, the money that we're using today is debt, right? The money that we're using is debt. So we're settling our transactions using debt. So on a Bitcoin standard, the way that Bitcoin changes money, Bitcoin, like I said, Bitcoin is money. Bitcoin is a way to transfer, account, and store for value. How Bitcoin changes money is that instead of using credit cards and debit cards and using money that doesn't actually exist, we use a form of money that has a limited supply.
Hmm.
Nobody can create more of it out of thin air. Nobody can produce more of it. So essentially, if I got this $100 bill, I had to work for it,
Hmm.
right? The US government or the Canadian government can get more $100 bills and they don't have to work for them. They can print them out of thin air. So this essentially makes it so that we have a system where one group of people can create money out of thin air and they can take the productivity of another group of people without actually doing anything. That's what Bitcoin solves. So what Bitcoin does is it takes that ability to print money away from everybody. It stops them from being able to print money. It stops them from being able to from being able to steal our productivity. It stops them from being able to steal our way of transferring, storing, and accounting for value. So anybody who stores value in something that's not scarce, there are certain characteristics that money has to have. So they're fungibility, scarcity, durability, divisibility. Essentially, if a form of money doesn't have those characteristics, then it's not money. It doesn't work as money, right? So this $100 bill, because it can be printed out of thin air, it can be created by a group of people and they can just distribute it to everybody in the world. This form of money is not money. We believe it to be money. We believe that it has $100 worth of value, but what does that even mean? That $100 keeps changing every single day. So how Bitcoin, again, something else that Bitcoin changes is it has all of those characteristics and it has them perfectly. So they work very, very well. They're designed to work for all of these for all of these functions. These characteristics are designed to work for all of these functions, and over time, maybe we'll find something that works as money better. But Bitcoin works best as money because nobody can create more. There's only ever going to be 21 million. If you hold one out of that 21 million, you hold a very specific amount of the total money in the entire world, right? So how Bitcoin changes things is instead of, first of all, instead of anybody being able to print like this, use plastic, the cost of producing this is less than the cost of the value of it. Instead of somebody being able to print this and steal somebody else's wealth, you have to actually work for it. So how Bitcoin changes things is, of course, gives us that form of money that we can actually store value in. In this form of money that we have from the old world, the broken money, the fiat currency, it doesn't store value. So Bitcoin changes all of that. To me, money is in everything. I'm sure we'll go into this in the rest of the podcast, but money changes
Yeah.
everything, right? It's so
But
important in every aspect of our lives.
Rajat, generally, first of all, great intro for Bitcoin. But generally, what happens is that once you talk about Bitcoin and you just say that it's a great way. So most of the people, uh, they don't understand Bitcoin, and not just most. I mean, when we started our journey, we didn't understood the true meaning of how Bitcoin is going to impact our
Mm-hmm.
lives, and not just our life, people around us, and not just about the economy, but the emotional, societal part of it. I mean, and those are very deeper concepts. Like, I'm not going into that directly. Let's begin with the moment you talk about Bitcoin, and just the first thing you try and convince people is that it is a great store of value and the world is acknowledging it. First of all, right? And you give one or two specific yardsticks, specific, you try and give them an example of gold. How big is gold in terms of store of value? It's a 13 trillion market cap. So Bitcoin is obviously Bitcoin is a great alternative to gold and all that stuff. You try and discuss that. People instantly say, no, no, no. I agree, but you see, stock market, it's a great store of value. Stock market has given me amazing 15% kind of a return, and there are a couple of individual stocks that have given me 40% return, 50% return. And I know that company, I read newspaper every day, I'm comfortable with it, and the stock market is going up forever. Okay. Then few people you meet, then they'll say, boss, forget Bitcoin, you buy that real estate in that particular area. That area is the new area. An airport is coming near that area. Industrial area is coming near that. IT hub is coming near that area. That area is going to go up forever. Real estate, nobody can beat real estate, boss. And you say, okay, then you obviously try to put in your point. I have my points. I want to understand from your perspective. I'm sure you also get these kind of replies when you talk about Bitcoin. Then let's start with why gold is not the right. I won't say because obviously gold lovers will comment. Obviously, what is the problem with gold as a store of value? Let's understand that, because till date nobody had even thought of it, that gold does have a problem as a store of value when you compare it with Bitcoin. Real estate does have a problem. Stock markets do have a problem when you compare it with Bitcoin.
Yeah, of course. So I think the main issue with gold stocks and real estate is that they don't have a fixed supply. So every asset, the price is based on supply and demand. So if people want it more than the supply is available, so if the supply exceeds demand, then of course the price will go down because there's more things available. People need to sell them, and they need to get whatever price they can get. So we can see that in the Canadian real estate market right now. A lot of people are selling their condos, and there aren't enough buyers because interest rates are too high. So what that does is it decreases the demand for houses, and now condo prices are decreasing. During the pandemic, interest rates were very low. There weren't very many people selling their houses. They didn't want to leave their house because they just wanted to stay at home. They wanted to stay safe. I guess they were scared of the pandemic, so not a lot of people were selling. So at that point, prices went up. So demand was up, supply was down. We can see this in real time. Today, demand for houses is low and supply is high. We're seeing a lot of people who are selling their houses because they think prices are going to go down, or they want to move to another house, or they bought another house and now they want to get rid of their house. But now we're basically back to having higher supply than demand. But prices will always fluctuate based on that. But the main thing that separates Bitcoin from all of these other things, gold, stocks, and real estate, is that the newly issued supply is always increasing for all of these assets. That's one thing. That's one thing. But then there's also other issues, but that's one thing. The newly issued supply for gold can always increase. So basically the difference here is that what if scientists, or what if astronauts are able to go to
mm, mm.
uh, space to get more gold and bring it back? Well, I know a lot of people in India, they own, I believe housewives own something like 50% of the total amount of gold or something like that. Is that true?
Yeah, yeah. So Indian households have close to 25,000 tons of gold with them. It is like three
Wow.
times of what US have.
Yeah, that's insane. So let's say, okay, so let's say that happens. Let's say we're able to find gold and bring it back to Earth. Let's say we're able to do that somehow. I don't know how
Yeah.
that's going to happen. I'm not in that field. I'm not in space exploration and all that stuff.
Mm,
But
mm,
let's say that happens. We find gold, we bring it back to Earth. What's going to happen
mm,
to the value of that gold? I think your audience would be directly impacted by this. That's why I'm trying to bring this up. So
mm.
what do you think would happen to the value of that gold? How can you explain that to your audience, I guess?
Yeah, yeah. So as per me, I have created content on that. So gold is inflationary. Not many people realize that. If you see over the years, gold has an inflation rate of close to 1.75%. Right, 1.75% is a huge inflation. If you try to compare this thing with Bitcoin, Bitcoin is still inflationary because the supply schedule is such, but over the period of time, Bitcoin will become deflationary, right? And ultimately, the whole supply will come into this thing. And obviously, but when you compare gold with other assets, then obviously gold looks very nice, and then that's the reason gold is increasing in its price. What makes Bitcoin different from gold is that whenever there is a demand for gold, the miner goes back to the mining field and gets back more gold into the system, and they try to dump it in the market because they want to take advantage of the high prices. But the beauty of Bitcoin is no matter uh, how bullish things become, no matter BlackRock, Germany, US tomorrow decides to buy Bitcoin at once, nobody can just go back to the mining field and get more Bitcoin. Right, that's the beauty about it. Because of its schedule, because of this, the supply embedded in the code, nobody can increase the supply. So that makes Bitcoin special. Because when people say that gold is also great store of value, yes, gold is a great store of value. uh, and obviously, out of the whole lot, it is one of the best. It has proven its value since 5,000 years. But uh, when Bitcoin was not there, it was in fact the number one store of value. But after Bitcoin, when you compare it with Bitcoin, definitely Bitcoin supersedes gold in every sense. And most people don't realize today that gold mining has not gone below the ocean. Once they figure it out, because once they figure it out, okay, now let's go and mine below the ocean, right? I mean, nobody knows how much gold is available there. Then comes Mars and all other planets. But I think gold is abundant. Gold is not scarce. Gold is rare, but it is not scarce. Most of the people don't even understand the difference between rarity and scarcity, right? So that this is very important to know. And I didn't knew all these facts, to be very honest. I mean, I was a gold bug myself, but when I when I met Bitcoin, and then I listened to Michael Saylor's videos, couple of them on gold, then those were like really eye opener.
I actually have a spreadsheet just based on your
Yeah, if you can,
1.75% inflation. I'm going
yeah,
to
it's
share
it's a.
something here.
If you want to share it, I can share it on screen.
Okay, so this spreadsheet.
Yeah.
So you were saying 1.75%. So if you have a basket of goods at $100 in the beginning of that of a 50-year period, let's say you have 50
Mm,
years, or even let's say you have 30 years, whatever. whatever the amount is. So let's say you have $100 worth of gold on Earth in total. That means that in 50 years at 1.75% inflation, you'll have $238 worth of gold. So essentially, if you have 100 ounces of gold in the beginning, in
Hmm.
total, there will be 238 ounces of gold. That's at a 1.75% inflation rate. So if you own, let's say you owned 100 ounces of gold in the beginning, and
Hmm.
there's 1.75% inflation based on proportions, you would
Hmm.
have lost 58% of your value,
Yeah, in 50
right?
years.
58% of your value, and that's at 1.75% inflation. If you go all the
Yeah,
way to, let's say if you go to 100 years, okay, so you would have lost 82% of your value over 100 years. So
100 years.
the
Yeah.
the point why I'm saying this, the reason for why I'm saying this is you're
Hmm.
saving your gold because you want to pass it on to your kids,
Hmm.
right? And by the time your kids get it, your grandkids get it, your great grandkids get it, it'll be worthless. It'll have lost
Yeah,
83% of its value at
82%.
1.75%. That's
Yeah,
with the current technology. That's if technology doesn't improve. If nothing improves, you have
yeah,
1.75%. You've lost 82% of your value, and gold is not going to get more scarce. It's going to get more abundant. We're going to find more
yeah,
ways to use gold. People are going to
yeah.
sell their gold because they're going to buy Bitcoin. Which millennials, which Gen Z, even Gen X, how many people do you know that are buying gold?
Hmm. Yeah,
Right?
they are
Not very
not.
many. Right? So
Yeah.
so the supply of gold is going to increase. That's I mean, unless let's say baby boomers, they keep hoarding their gold. People in India keep hoarding their gold. They keep thinking it's a discount. They keep
Hmm.
trying to catch a falling knife. Price keeps coming down in terms of Bitcoin. Of course, in terms of
Yeah.
US dollars, it'll go up. But what you're doing is you're giving your kids something that has lost real value. The world is deflationary, right? The natural state of things. This is something that Jeff Booth talks about a lot. I think he has a book, the price. I don't know
Price
what
of
it, price of tomorrow. Yeah, yeah, that's
price
what it
of
is.
tomorrow.
So the
Jeff
world.
Jeff Booth has been on my podcast once.
Oh, he has amazing. So the
Yeah.
world is naturally deflationary because with technology, things get easier to make. We get
Yeah. Yeah.
more things that we want. So prices should be coming down. So when you look at when you look at prices and things in terms of gold, so you could buy. There was a thing where you could buy one fine men's suit in terms of
Hmm.
gold for thousands of years. The technology to make that suit has improved. So the price of that suit should be decreasing. In
But
terms of
but
Bitcoin, it would have, right?
but it doesn't come down because of this money excess money printing.
It's because more and more gold is being discovered and added to the economy. That's
I
why the
give you a
price
very
doesn't come down,
I,
right?
I like to quote a very good example here.
Hmm.
Recently, I got this advertisement in the newspaper that now your city has the first outlet where you get this man-made diamonds. I was like, okay. Early we used to mine diamonds, from the below the earth crust, and now look at the greed of the miner or greed of the person. Humans are so greedy. The moment they get to know that this thing is valuable, they just try to get the maximum out of it.
Yeah.
So so they figured it out that how to create diamonds in the labs, artificial diamonds. They are, and the advertisement was such that they were saying that they are better than the natural diamonds, right? So understand, humans must have tried to make gold, and still there are
Hmm.
a lot of effort being done. I know there is this somebody was telling me that there is this uh, place in US where they're still trying to uh, make gold through this, colliding the atoms in a tunnel at a particular speed, and they are still into that experiment of producing gold in the lab. Then I just told him, this individual, this my answer was that if you compare steel versus gold, trust me, steel is better in terms of, you can make bridges with steel, you can make buildings with steel, you can make after steel you were able to create ships, and those ships could travel, and our whole economy actually grew after the invention of steel. uh, but gold has value. Why? Because steel can be produced in the labs. but you cannot still produce gold. Now understand, if you understand this analogy, now go back to Bitcoin, that you just
Yes.
can't produce it, and you know the supply and you know the schedule of it. You are so certain about it. You Bitcoin is so predictable that you can design your life around it. It is the only money today that we have where we can design our life around this thing. You cannot ride your life in a ship which doesn't have a compass. I mean, obviously, if I'll give you an option of two ships to sail to go through a journey, one has a compass and another doesn't have a compass, and another doesn't know where to go. They'll just figure it out once they are into the sea. Which ship you'll try and take your journey on.
See, that
So
makes
these
me
are
also think that also that compass is almost like the fixed supply of Bitcoin, right? When you
yeah.
don't know, okay, so if you're saving in gold, let's say you think, okay, there's going to be 10 million ounces of gold. There's 10 million
Mm,
ounces of gold right now, or whatever the amount is. I don't know what the total amount is,
yeah.
but let's say there's a total amount of gold of a certain amount. If you don't know what the amount is going to be in 50 years, then why are you saving in it?
Why you're saving it?
Right? How do you know
Mm,
that this thing won't be
mm,
made by
mm,
labs? How do you know that even lab? Oh, there was something actually that I read. Lab diamonds are so good that
yeah.
there are people who are dedicating their entire lives to their differentiating between good and bad diamonds. They can't see the difference between lab diamonds and real
Yeah.
diamonds, diamonds grown on Earth. They can't figure out the difference. So it just goes to show you we've come so far. Like you said, people want to make money. We've come so far that people have figured out how to create something that's supposed to be naturally created. They're going to do that for gold. If they can, let's say they can create an ounce of gold in the lab for $400. They figure out something that's going to do that for them. How much are they going to sell that lab made gold for? This is how things work, right? It's much harder to take things out of the earth. Like if we had, that's why
Mm,
all this stuff with lab made meat. Why is lab
mm,
made meat a thing? I know
yeah.
a lot of Hindus, they don't eat meat. Lab made vegetables, lab GMO vegetables. What is it?
Mm,
Genetically modified. Why are these a thing? It's because we want to produce them faster. We want to be able to produce them easier. We want to be able to produce them in a way that pesticides don't impact them. So we want to put in less work and get more output. That's exactly what's happening with everything. It's going to happen with gold. It's going to happen with stocks. That's why companies are able to, when they're like, let's say GameStop stock went up. Now the
mm.
company is they're interested in making money, so they're going to start selling their shares. Are you aware of what's happening with GameStop?
Yeah, yeah. If you can elaborate that on that
Yeah, yeah.
story.
Absolutely. So their stock went up. Essentially, there's all these hedge funds who are short selling the stock. And there's a guy on Reddit who said, I'm going to buy a ton of options. I'm going to buy a ton of shares. And he got a bunch of people to buy those shares. Essentially, what he did was he created something called a short squeeze, where the short sellers, they have to buy back this stock in order to cover their negative position. A short seller is in a negative position. So they have to buy back the stock. They've shorted more shares than exist in the market, and now what's happening is the price has gone up so much that GameStop is issuing more shares. I believe they issued something like $500 million worth of shares. So they created these shares out of thin air. They took
Yeah.
advantage of the fact that the company is making no profits, but the stock has skyrocketed. They're taking advantage of this. Of course, that's just how human nature is. So what Bitcoin does is it stops us from being able to take advantage. It stops us from being able to manipulate the supply. That's the special thing about this. What
Even
this
even
does is,
even
so go
Michael
ahead.
Saylor went for a stock split.
Yeah, right. A stock split is different. Stock split, he's not he's not creating more shares.
Mm,
He's just splitting what he has into multiple. It's like slicing a pizza into more slices.
right.
But what GameStop is doing is they literally created more
Different.
shares and they sold them. That's what they did, right? That's just, it's just how, I mean, it's essentially what they were doing is they were bailing out hedge funds who had shorted all these shares, because instead of having to buy those shares on the market, they can buy them straight from GameStop, right? But with MicroStrategy, it's different. So I like to actually think of dollars and rupees and pounds, all these currencies, as a stock split where you don't get all of the shares. So let's say MicroStrategy did a 1 for 10 or 10 for 1 stock split. If they give you 9 shares, that's essentially what fiat currencies are, right? Like if you see it from that perspective, I feel like it shows you that the
No,
entire system is
so
corrupted.
uh, no, there is still something that I want to add here.
Oh yeah.
In stock split, I feel this is again my belief is again in stock split in general sense, nothing happens to the market cap because the market cap remains the same because you have literally just divided one share into say two or three shares or or four share or whatever. You've basically split one share into pieces like a pizza, right? But once you split the share, so if suppose your share was say suppose $1,000, suppose, and when you split a share into five or seven pieces, suppose, then each slice is worth say $200, right? Now what happens that more people will have access to micro strategy share, especially the retailer, people with small budgets and people who are traders will get their hand on the share. Now your share becomes more tradable and people will kind of trade it more and there will be more speculation around it. You have invited more speculators than long term investors. So what happens once your share was doing very fine before the stock split, and after the stock split there is a history of companies where they have not performed that well after stock split. So stock split has also a catch.
I didn't. I personally have stopped doing my research on stocks. I don't really look into stocks that
I,
much
I
anymore. But
understand.
that's it's great that you
That's
looked into that. So the fact I didn't know that. I didn't
I'm
know
just
some
I'm just
stocks
giving
actually
you a
underperform
perspective.
after the
I'm
stock
just
split.
giving I'm just giving a perspective to it. It's
No,
like
no, that's great. Good to very good to know. I'm happy to be learning. No, that's good to know.
because
But
because all these shit coins, those
yeah,
the meme coins, they are
yeah,
more speculative in nature because
yes,
the pricing, the entry and exit point is very reasonable. But
yeah,
people do when people get into Bitcoin, they come with a mindset of having a long term this thing. Suppose tomorrow you divide Bitcoin into you know you divide $60,000 into 10 pieces of $6,000 each. So basically you're inviting more speculators, more traders will get into it and they'll just pump and dumps are there will be more traded. So I mean people mindset will also change.
yeah. But I mean, I feel like with Bitcoin, it's already there,
It's
right?
already there. Yeah.
You can split it into 100 million
Mm,
units, so it doesn't really.
100.
You can buy a 0.01 if you want to today, right?
Mm.
So I mean, even with stock splits, I'm not sure how widely available it is in India, but you can essentially buy any stock with fractions now, right? You can buy fractions of shares, like you can buy 0.01 shares of the S&P
Yeah,
500.
yeah,
There's,
yeah.
I don't know how widely available that is in India, but in Canada, you can actually do that. There's a lot of exchanges that are offering that.
Mm.
They're letting you do that because that's just they make more money that way, right? They make more money
Yeah, they may,
um, if they get you to buy more shares, if they convince you that, oh, you can buy more, you can buy more, you can buy more. They convince you
mm,
because more people are having less money now. It costs
mm,
more in your income, in your earnings. I don't know if have you seen this chart where basically it shows you the price of the S&P 500 versus your income versus your wage.
mm.
So
No.
the price has gone up. The price has gone up significantly. It's a great chart. It
Mm,
basically shows you that in the 1970s, I think it was, the S&P 500 cost 10 times the hourly wage. Today, it costs something like 25 times the hourly wage,
mm,
which is crazy. So I feel like that's part of it. Even MicroStrategy, it helps them out. But yeah, they're available now. They're available very widely. So I don't know how much of an impact it'll have. But
mm.
maybe there's another perspective here.
Yeah. Okay, moving on from stocks, what is the problem with real estate? I mean, you have tweeted a couple of things. Let me just share, or if you want to share your Twitter handle, and
Yeah.
because there are a couple of tweets you shared on the housing market. I mean, what is the issue there?
So how's the same thing, right? It's a supply issue. You can over time. I think what we're going to see is there's going to be a lot more companies that are there's a profit to be made with housing, right? If you can make houses for cheaper and you can put them out there, you can make a profit, right? So over time, I think what's going to happen is with 3D printing. I know right now 3D printed houses aren't the nicest. There's houses that are what's it called? They're stackable homes. They're like you can build them. They make them in a factory. They're just four walls and a roof, and they bring them to you wherever your
Mm.
land is, and you can build it within 2-3 days, right? So what happens when the prices of these things drop, when it costs less to make it, prices of homes are going to drop.
Oh,
Houses are going to
and
be
these
more
houses are
widely
these
available.
houses are durable.
Yeah, of course they're great. They last 50 years, they last 20 years, even if they
Oh,
last 5 years. Even if they last 5 years, if you can pay 20 if you can pay 5% to buy this house and it lasts you 5 years. Everything is disposable now. So
hmm.
even if they don't last, even if they don't last very long, you bought that land, you bought something that's disposable, you put it on your land, you live in it for 5 years, and if you want to continue living in there, in that house, you can continue living there. But if you don't want to, you can leave, right? So I feel like I mean, the entire world is moving to people just not staying in one area. There's digital nomads everywhere. So
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
this is something that will this maybe this is something that'll spark something in real estate, right? So let's say instead of having to rent a house, you can lease the land from the government and you can build your house on there temporarily,
you've given a
right?
very new perspective to it. Why,
Right?
you know, why, Rajat? Because what you're saying right now, I mean, 10 years before, like, I mean, nobody would have thought of giving up an idea of on cars. So if you could have told somebody that there will be a system where people can just on an app press a button and the car will come at the doorstep and you can go to the office like Ubers and all that. I mean, there is definitely uh, a drop in these car sales and the number of people who are taking the car riding, car sharing, ride shares and all that. So tomorrow, housing could be one of these things where where you can have an app, just pick an area and say, I have a land, I need somebody to build a house in this particular area. The builder comes, build your house in 3 days, and wow, you're ready to stay.
Could you
This is
imagine like
crazy,
we already
crazy,
have
crazy.
Airbnb,
We
right?
already have Airbnb, and tomorrow an app where you can just pick your location,
Yeah.
choose a builder, different brands, and the guy and and compare the pricing, and the guy will be there, and your house is ready in 3 days,
Yeah.
and you can dismantle it in 5 years. Or if you want to do some additions or changes, that is also available.
Right? Like if so that completely changes real estate,
Oh.
right? It blows my
And,
mind
and,
that
and if single today, if houses can be built, maybe, I mean, tomorrow, then structures can also be built. Someday some technology will come.
well, yeah, absolutely. It's see 3D printing changes that, right? We can build higher and higher. The materials are so light, they're so strong. It's gonna improve over time. It's not like it's gonna get worse, right? Whatever we have today. If you look at 3D printed
No,
houses today,
it's like, Rajat, people used to travel in sea on wooden ships, and they used to say they
yeah,
are more stronger, and then came steel.
yeah, right. Sorry, one second. I'm just looking for something here. One 3D printed houses. I was looking at it. They actually don't look that bad, right? I mean,
Can you just
people are
show
into
show that?
weird stuff. People are into weird stuff already. Okay, so this is what they look like. That doesn't look bad,
Oh, yeah,
right?
no, pretty
Right? It
nice.
doesn't look bad. It'll just improve over time. It'll just get better. Plus,
Yeah.
this is just a facade, right? You can just
Mm,
put another face on top. People are already doing that. So just to make this look a little nicer, even this
mm,
actually looks very cool to me. I
mm.
think this looks great, right? They're already here. So where do you think it's going? What Why would you
Oh
want to own
wow.
something that can be created at will? And like I said, I don't know if these are. I don't think these ones are like okay. So look at this. Affordable starter homes
Hmm.
is 3D printed in just 18 hours.
How much?
It's probably like $200,000-300,000 right now, but eventually it'll decrease in price, right?
Oh my God. I mean, for me, it is an eye opener. Nobody has touched upon
Yeah,
this topic till date. I mean, this
yeah,
could disrupt the real estate market.
everything. Oh, see, it says here, uh, $400,000 cheaper. I don't know.
Mm,
I'm seeing this article for the first time, but oh, sorry, I didn't realize. Okay, so I'm seeing this article for the first time, but it shows
mm.
you $400,000 cheaper. It's obviously relatively basic, but you can buy it's $400,000 cheaper than another. I don't know how much these cost. I'm just guessing, right? This is, but
What
over
I'm
time, it's
saying,
like
over time, when there will be high demand and high production, and there will be competition, more players will be into it. I'm sure
yeah,
the prices are going to come down.
yeah, that's exactly what it is. Prices will eventually come down. That's the most important thing.
And why
Even
people?
for okay,
So the real estate industry is pushing people to find cheaper options, right?
what do you
They
mean?
themselves are pushing people. They themselves are responsible for it. If
Oh
tomorrow
yeah,
this
yeah, yeah.
thing,
Exactly. Yes,
if,
yes,
if
yes.
tomorrow if this thing becomes fashion, the real estate industry today is pushing people to find alternatives.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so when I was a realtor, um, I sold. Okay, so when you're a realtor, you work to basically make as much commission as you can. Your goal is to
Hmm.
make as much commission as possible, right? Um, so when I was a realtor, there were a lot of people who were that I realized that were kind of manipulating the market.
Hmm.
A lot of people they get an so let's say for example I was a realtor during the pandemic. A lot of people weren't selling their houses, so the houses that were selling for a lot higher than they should have been, but a lot of people were just completely manipulating the market, and they were trying to get people to, because people were desperate, they wanted to buy a home, right? So
Hmm.
a lot of realtors, what they were doing is they were intentionally um, telling people to offer more. Even
Hmm.
if they had the highest offer, they were telling people to offer more so that they could get more money and more commission, more money for their uh, their seller, right? So the entire
Hmm.
system is like you said, the real estate market is pushing people towards this, right? Realtors are getting paid 5-6%. I get it; their work is hard. They don't always get sales. Not every realtor is going to do well, but the ones who do, they're millionaires, right? But
Hmm.
like you said, exactly what you said, real estate market itself is doing this. It's
Hmm.
intentionally making it harder and harder to buy a house. That 5% that realtors are making in commission, that's adding to the price of houses. That's
Hmm.
making houses more expensive, right? And who knows, maybe like what you said, you can
Hmm.
lease a piece of land on this app. You can lease it directly from the government, and you can
Hmm.
build this house temporary for 5 years, and then you can leave, right? If you have some business in your country, then why not? I mean, this would be a great way for even governments to bring workers into their country,
Hmm.
right? It would actually it would add more to productivity growth, and it would add to more to GDP than the current system, right?
Hmm.
Housing is the way that we work right now. We use houses as a way to build our GDP. I think Canada's GDP is like 40% from housing, from real estate. It might be higher, it might be lower. I don't know the exact numbers, but this is just a ballpark figure that I
Hmm.
remember. Something to look into if you want to. But essentially, houses are being used right now as a business. They're not being used as shelter.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. You shared this thing where you said that there's no housing shortage. It's just people buying houses they don't even need. 10% of all houses in the US are unoccupied. 15 million homes sitting empty, right? Home prices will drop in terms of US dollar. So this is like so vacant houses right now are at all time high. So new homes for sale, it's at an all time high, right? This just shows that uh, the supply for houses has been increased and there are no takers for that. And second thing is because most of the millennials today, are moving. They are not stuck at one place. The people are moving from one place to another for jobs, for different reasons, and that is also one reason why I see that millennials and the next generation, are dropping the idea of owning a car or owning a house. So I think things are changing, and that is the reason I tell people that, gold we have discussed, stocks, you can have stock splits and all different kind of things that can happen. Stocks can be produced, and then you don't know that if Bill Gates was a brilliant entrepreneur, there's no surety the next management, when Bill Gates passes away, I wish him a long life, but everybody comes with an expiry date. After him, who is going to manage Microsoft, right? Is the next management, I don't know. After Elon Musk, right? Maybe the next successor is not that influential, maybe, or that forward thinker, maybe. You never know. So the companies all depends upon that. You are on
Or
mute.
even who knows? Or even who knows? What if Elon Musk does something that the rest of the world doesn't like, and they somehow start
Yeah,
uh, they start boycotting Tesla. Like
yeah,
what happened with Starbucks? Starbucks
yeah.
stock, is Starbucks stock recovered yet?
Yeah.
Starbucks stock is still down. It's down significantly from, so in the last year, Starbucks stock is down 27%, while
Hmm.
the stock market
Hmm.
is up 26%. Starbucks stock is down 27%.
Hmm. Hmm.
Right?
Hmm.
So how do you know that that's not going to happen to Tesla, Apple, whichever other company there is? It's because there's people running those companies. They're human. They're going to
Hmm.
do whatever makes them, they're greedy, right? They're going to do whatever makes them happy. They're going to do something that makes them more money. A lot of
Hmm.
them, I mean, I know maybe Elon Musk is different. Who knows? Maybe Steve Ballmer is different. Maybe who's the CEO of Apple? What's this guy's name? I forgot his name, but maybe he's
Hmm.
different. Maybe they're not going to do something like that. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're not greedy. Maybe they're actually trying to work for the greater good. But essentially, even if stock values don't go down, stocks are stealing from us, right? All these companies. Um, let's say Apple, for example. Do you think Apple would be so profitable if they couldn't get cheap labor?
No.
Right?
Hmm.
What would happen to Apple? What would happen to Apple if, let's say, I don't know where their phones are made. I think they're made. I think a lot of them are made in China. I'm not sure. I don't know for a fact, but let's say whatever cheap labor they're getting, or let's say they get minerals, they get materials, they get raw materials from some country, and this country is coerced into giving them those materials for cheap, right? They have labor for cheap. They have people mining this material for cheap. What happens when all of that stops? What
Yeah.
happens if we stop being so global? What happens if there are competitors who are also buying that labor, and these countries, they realize that, oh, we can increase our prices? What happens to Apple? They can't sell their, if Apple, let's say Apple's costs suddenly double, they double, and they want to keep their share price the same, they're probably going to have to double their prices, right? If their costs double and they want to keep their share price the same, they're going to have to double their prices. But what
And
happens if, again,
Rajat,
people aren't buying their products anymore?
Michael Saylor touched upon a very important point. I remember he
Mm,
said that Apple is a cash-rich company. It has it has a lot of cash, and the way cash is losing its value. I mean, uh, what if tomorrow the credit becomes, uh, the value of US dollar goes down and down and down, right? What if tomorrow they don't have, they figure out that, okay, we need to invest our money in such a way that we get the maximum value to our shareholders. There
mhm.
could be troubles for big companies, I mean, right? Because, tomorrow, today you are concerned about TikToks, you're banning TikToks and all that stuff. Tomorrow, China can also ban certain products of yours, right? China
Yeah.
has already done that. Geopolitical scenario, Russia doesn't allow Apple, say, tomorrow. Russia doesn't allow Google to search engine to be used in Russia, maybe tomorrow. There could be a lot of things. There could be supply chains getting disrupted in war like situation, right? So lot of things can happen in future. Let's not get into that, I mean, because
Wait,
that will
I
be.
actually want to talk about one thing. Sorry, Kashif, I want to say something. With stocks, it goes even deeper, right? But it goes a lot deeper than that. But let's look at it from just very simple terms. Who holds your stocks? Your stocks are held by a custodian. You don't even hold
Yeah.
your stocks, right? So regardless of what happens, it doesn't matter which company it is, doesn't matter how successful they are
Mm,
30, 50,
mm,
100,000 years from now. I don't care. If the US government says you can't have your stocks back, you can't have your
mm.
stocks back.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
This is
simply
and
it. Like that's just that alone should tell you that maybe this isn't the future. Maybe stocks are not going to
your
be
stock
around for
is
very long.
actually not your stock. So this is
Exactly.
the bottom line. Yeah.
It's like not your keys, not your coins, right? But for stocks,
Yeah,
if
yeah,
you don't own these stocks, if you wanted to take self custody of stocks in Canada, it would probably cost you $300-400 to get stock certificates,
yeah.
and
Mm,
that's not. I feel like that when you can take self custody of Bitcoin right now, the fees are something like 50 cents Canadian,
mm,
like
mm,
what is that, 30 euros, or sorry, 30 rupees, something like
mm.
that.
Yeah.
You can take self custody for 30 rupees. You could take self custody for 50 cents Canadian, 50 cents US.
Mm,
While on the other hand, with stocks, you have to pay
yeah.
$300-400
So
for stock certificates. So that alone just differentiates everything.
so I also have another perspective. People feel that real estate, they are in the possession of the real estate. Even real estate is not their real
No.
estate, because the proof of ownership is with the government. It is the file is there. Tomorrow they can plan a bridge around it, they can plan a railway track around it. They can say, okay, we need it for defense. Tomorrow they can say it's a floods can come anytime here, we have this thing, warning, you need to leave this place, right? Anything can happen to real estate maybe tomorrow. So I mean, there are you know like in Ukraine, people have had best of properties in Ukraine, but billionaires have left their homes, right? And those properties, nobody want to live there,
Yeah.
right?
There's also property taxes. If you stop paying property taxes for
Yeah.
a couple of years, what's
Mm.
going to happen?
Yeah.
Even if your property's paid off, right? Your
Mm.
property's going to be auctioned off to the next highest bidder. And who
Mm.
knows how much that bidder is going to offer? Maybe they're going to offer $100,000 less than you offered. Maybe they're going to offer $200,000-500,000 less. Maybe your property is worthless at that point, right? It's crazy. It's
Very
what you
difficult.
said about Ukraine is huge. Like that's just
Very. So I mean, uh, obviously in a situation tomorrow, if suppose Rajat has a house in, say, I'm just giving an example. Say suppose Rajat has a house, brilliant house. I mean, it's one of the best houses, but that house is in Taiwan, and I say, Rajat, you just go and spend rest of your life in Taiwan. Rajat will say, Taiwan is not in a great position right now. Maybe 5 years down the line, it can be into a troublesome island. Let me not just go there and live in the house. Now Rajat wants to sell this house. Now who is going to sell it? Because all the buyers are smart. Because they're gonna say, yeah, Taiwan is a beautiful place. It's a hub for semiconductor chips and all that. But Taiwan. There is some geopolitical tension in that island. So these are the kind of things today impacting real estate. People don't just
yeah,
understand and realize it.
yeah, for sure. See, this is the thing. Most people just see real estate at its face value. They see, oh, price goes up. They see that rental income is always going to be coming. But the thing is that if you couldn't use leverage to buy real estate, if you couldn't, if we moved from a financial system where your money could be created out of thin air to one
Hmm.
where it can't be created out of thin air, it means that you can't borrow money to buy houses because it's too much risk for banks. Because people who buy
Hmm.
houses are going to default if the price of the house goes down. They're going to walk away from the property. There's too much risk for the lender. So I think if we ever do go to a Bitcoin standard, just because of that alone, because you can't create money out of thin air, real estate market is funded with fake money. It's a pyramid scheme. It's a Ponzi scheme that's funded with fake money, and banks are guaranteed a certain return. So they're the beneficiaries. They're the biggest beneficiaries. People are told that, oh, your house price is going to keep going up forever. You can keep earning rental income. You can get passive income. All this BS. People keep falling for it, and they will keep falling for it for years. They'll keep falling for it for decades. But the thing is that, like, back to what we were talking about, the app, if that shows up in your
Yeah.
city next year, what are you going to do?
People will remember this podcast. When I'll definitely, whenever that application will come, I will just take out a clip of it and say, in 2024 we had projected that a real estate will be in trouble after this app comes up where people can just stand on the piece of the land, pick a location, click the button, the builder is there in the truck with all the
Yeah,
material within couple of hours, and within couple of hours your home is ready. That's it.
yeah, yeah. That it's scary.
Mind boggling.
When you think about it, because people haven't even seen this yet. They haven't even imagined. They don't. Most people still think that real estate is valuable because people want to live in houses. They need to live in houses. That's what they
No,
think.
no,
That's
no,
how
no, 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 no,
far
no.
back. That's how far back our thinking is. But
You,
like, okay, go
you, you, you,
explain your side. Yeah, yeah,
no, no, you're in Canada. I mean,
yeah,
the moment you take out your car, because I have couple of people who tell me that Canada is a beautiful place, but it is beautiful because of one reason, because you don't have people.
yeah,
So
yeah,
there are empty houses. There are, like, I mean, you have street where you'll have beautiful houses, but people are not living in it. At times it gives you haunted feeling also. You feel very lonely at times because there are houses, but people don't live in that, right? So I mean, there are colonies and housing societies which are like lying vacant.
yeah. It's true.
Real estate is only a new saving account for people, because saving account is not giving you more than 0.5%. Inflation is 6%. You want to beat that inflation, so you say, what is the new saving account? They say real estate is the new saving account. That's it.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. I think a lot of people they see every conversation that I have with somebody, they're like, "Oh, I want to buy a house." I don't ask them why, but I know for a fact that the way that they think is because they use it as a savings account. Because a lot of people tell me, "Oh, I want to buy a rental property." Um, if I guess if they don't know what they're talking about, or if they're trying to make themselves sound great, they're going to say, "Oh, I'm trying to offer cheap housing. I'm trying to offer housing to people so they can live in a place, and I'm doing it because I'm improving this place." But that's not the reality, right? They're doing it because if they saved in dollars, those dollars would disappear, but they don't realize it. They don't see it from first principles. And even myself, I didn't see it from first principles, right? When I thought it was a scam, when I thought real estate was a great investment, when I thought stocks were a great investment, I didn't see it from this perspective, right? Most people don't. Most people never will. They'll see it very late. They'll see it. I say this all the time. Most people will ignore Bitcoin until it reaches $1 million.
Hmm.
That's going to be the case. That's 100% going to be
Hmm.
the case.
Right. So Rajat, uh, after having some amazing conversation around so much, in fact we were able to do some deeper understanding of around real estate and stocks. I mean, that's the best part I liked about this podcast today. Rajat, I'm sure people come to you and say, what is the maximum that Bitcoin can go from here? I mean, even if whatever we have discussed, suppose people also learn about Bitcoin and they figure it out. Okay, it is the next thing, they should really take a note of it. Where do you think Bitcoin is heading to? I mean, and by when?
I think by 2034, before 2034, I think we'll see $1 million, but who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. See, that's the thing with these kinds of predictions, it's impossible. Bitcoin can
Hmm.
go to $1 million by the end of this year. Bitcoin could go literally to $1 billion by the end of this year, right? It just
Hmm.
depends on when people adopt it, right? When people figure it out. For all we know, maybe China is planning to dump all of their $1 trillion worth of treasuries to buy Bitcoin. And maybe they do that tomorrow night. Who knows?
but
I don't think,
but Germany is selling.
who cares? That's fine. 1 trillion, they don't have $1 trillion worth of Bitcoin. One Bitcoin's entire market cap is $1 trillion,
Yeah,
right? So if
yeah.
China goes and says, "Oh, we're going to buy $1 trillion worth of Bitcoin overnight, we're going to buy every single Bitcoin on every single exchange," now you
Hmm.
guys now you fight over the scraps. You fight over everything else. What happens in that case? It can happen
Hmm.
overnight. But okay, so let's go back to your question. So you said, what do I think Bitcoin will be at in where do I think Bitcoin is going? Where can it go? It could go to billions of dollars. It could go to any amount of money. The thing is that there's a very important concept about price being determined at the margin. I'm not sure if you know about him, British Hodl. he
Yeah.
kind of made me think about that concept. But basically, the price of any commodity is based on whatever the people who are on the market and selling it for are willing to sell it for. If too much supply comes to the market, price will drop exponentially, right? It doesn't matter how high it went up, price will drop exponentially. If there's no buyers, price will drop at it. It'll drop based on the margin. So it'll drop based on the marginal buyer, right? So what that means is whatever somebody's willing to offer for Bitcoin is the price. If a buyer and a seller can come to an agreement for a price, that's the price. The market cap is based on that price. So that price times the total supply. So for all we know, one Bitcoin can be worth $1 million by the end of this year.
Mm.
One Bitcoin can be worth $10 million by the end of 2025. Just it's all just based on supply and demand, right? Fidelity said something like $1 billion by 2038 or 2039, which is a crazy prediction, but most people don't see it, right? Because most people can't wrap their heads around exponential growth. I'm gonna show you something. There's this thing that I always like to
Mm.
reference. Bitcoin's price went from 64,000 naira in November 20th, 2015, all the way
Mm.
up to 93 million naira in July 12th, 2024. A lot of people will say, oh, the naira is weaker than the dollar. The naira, it's not relevant. But okay, so let's look at Bitcoin to USD. Right now, US dollar is in US dollars is at $58,000. At one point, it was at $74,000. So if you look at the same period of time, this is the
Mm.
exact same period of time, right? Right now, Bitcoin is at 60,000 Canadian dollar, US dollars. In that nine years, in 9 years, the naira price went from being able to buy one one Bitcoin for 64,000 naira to $93 million, 93 million naira, sorry, naira
Mm.
per Bitcoin. Who would have predicted this? Nobody. Do you think people living in Nigeria would have predicted that this is how much the value of their currency will drop? No, right? It's the exact same thing with Bitcoin. People say that, it's the exact same thing with US dollar. So a lot of people will say to this, I've posted about this before. A lot of people argue with me. They say, US dollar is different. US dollar is backed by the full faith and trust in the US government. But what happens if
Can
the
you
US
put in
government starts? So go
Bitcoin
ahead.
to INR?
I know, yeah, yeah. So a lot of people say that, US dollar is different because it 4,844,404 Indian rupees. So a lot of people say that, the US dollar is different because the US government is controlling the supply. But what happens if they get into the situation where they have to borrow $10 trillion to pay off the interest on their debt?
Mm.
What happens in that case? What happens to the price of one Bitcoin, right? Who's going to buy that debt at that point?
Mm.
What's going to happen is the Federal Reserve is going to have to keep printing more and more money. If they keep letting the US government keep borrowing more and more money, keep doing whatever they want, they're going to have to borrow more and more money over time. The Federal Reserve is going to have to print more and more money. Exactly the same thing that's happening in with the Nigerian naira, right? The naira is completely manipulated. Same thing with the US dollar. US dollar is manipulated. So the naira went from 64,000 naira to 94 million naira. Who's to say that that's not going to happen in the next 9 years? Who can,
Mm.
who, maybe in 9 years, we look back at this video and we say, wow, this Rajat guy was a complete idiot. He knew nothing. He had no idea what he was talking about. Bitcoin is still at $60,000. Or we come back to this video and we say, wow, he's a genius. He predicted this. He predicted now Bitcoin is at 94 million US dollars. But I mean, it could happen both ways, right? I have a feeling that over the next 10 years, Bitcoin is going to blow our minds. I think over the next
Mm.
10 years, we're going to see at least a million. We could see 10 million for all we know. We could see 100 million. We could see $1 billion within 10 years, right? And that's just all dependent on game theory. Whoever, if there's no Bitcoin available to be bought and people finally see what it's worth, they're going to buy everything. They're going to buy whatever is available. They're going to convince people to sell what they have. And I personally don't plan to sell anything under $1 million, right? What's the point? Because I know it's going there. I would rather
Mm.
work on creating cash flow, I'd rather work on creating businesses. I think a lot of Bitcoiners are thinking exactly the same way. You're thinking the same way. I know for a fact that you're thinking the same way. You hold Bitcoin, you're not going to sell it until it goes to much higher prices, because instead of selling it to pay for your expenses, you would rather create value, right?
Hmm.
Creating value is what got us here. We Satoshi Nakamoto created the ultimate value with Bitcoin. We're continuously creating value, creating more and more value, trying to improve the world, right? And that's my goal. That's your goal. That's the goal of probably a lot of people listening to this video. A lot of Bitcoin is being taken and it's being put away forever. It's literally never going to be sold again. Even out of that 21 million, there's an estimate of 3 to 5 million that are just completely gone. They're never going to be found again. So where is this going? I don't know. Uh, where could it go? It could go to any number whatsoever. For all we know, the US dollar might fail within the next 10 years. And one Bitcoin is equal to one Bitcoin at that point. All we can do
Hmm.
is trade Bitcoin for goods and services. We can't even we don't nobody even wants to give their Bitcoin away for dollars anymore.
Right, Rajat. Thank you very much. I think, guys, you must be enjoying this conversation. And uh, Rajat, if you're not following Rajat, I mean, first of all, right now, instantly, what you should do is you must have seen that I was going through his Twitter handle. I mean, first of all, follow Rajat. I mean, it's at the rate Rajat Sony Finance. So you just need to click on this, follow button, and this his Twitter handle is amazing. He already has 94,000 followers, and it is just amazing. I mean, the kind of deep insights, the kind of information he has. His handle is not about Bitcoin pricing or pumps and dumps and when it'll come down. His handle is about what is happening in the macroeconomics, what is happening at large, what is happening to gold, what is happening to real estate, what is happening to various countries. I mean, if you really want to understand Bitcoin from a macro perspective, this is the Twitter handle that you cannot miss. And second, Rajat also has a YouTube channel, at the rate Rajat Sony Finance. You can follow this channel. I just subscribed this channel, and you have these great videos. The best video uh, that I really liked was the history of money. I think that this was first
Oh,
one of his early videos, right?
it was the very top one.
Very top
The
one.
financial system is rigged.
Yeah, so this is like, I mean, it already has 16,000 followers. It's a 1 hour 36 minute long video. This video you cannot afford to miss, right? Guys, please do watch this video. Was one of my favorite video, and after looking at this video, I decided to bring Rajat on, because earlier I didn't knew that Rajat also does video podcast and how comfortable he will be. But once I saw his this thing, then I said, okay, let me just bring him in on our podcast. And most people, still I would like to tell people that Bitcoin is something that uh, you cannot just learn it through trading. For under having a deeper understanding of Bitcoin, just buy it, hodl it, and study it. And the best way to study Bitcoin is to listen to podcast, right? And podcast of relevant people. Rajat is definitely one of them, and there are many others. Saifuddin Amus, you can follow his podcast, his book. But whenever I've seen, the most you learn is, my personal experience is that after the Bitcoin standard, uh, one thing that has helped me to understand Bitcoin is through podcast. When you listen to conversations, and the best way to learn it is while I'm driving. So suppose uh, I generally watch a podcast, I save them, and then if I have a driving plan from one city to another and the journey is going to be for 5 hours, then I finish at least two podcasts. 1.5 hour. So I mean, that is the best way to listen to podcast, and then you also have that attention, to that whatever is being discussed. I mean, that is the best way to do it. And the another best way is to do it is while I'm walking for 30-40 minutes. if you're walking in a garden or in your society or on a road or while a slight jogging, you can, you know, hear them while doing that. So, Rajat, any last thoughts before we leave? But this is going to be momentarily. I mean, I'm sure on some other topics, maybe because today we have not touched upon uh, Bitcoin ETFs, right, and institutional money that is coming into it. Probably I will keep it for next time, and we'll dedicate that video completely on institutions. So before we leave, Rajat, any last thoughts?
Yeah, I wanted to mention, if you find this video interesting, just maybe let Kashif know. Maybe leave a thumbs up or something for him. Help his channel as well. I'm definitely interested in coming back. If you'd have me, I would definitely appreciate that. That would be awesome. Yeah, I think closing remarks. Just my predictions. I think houses are going to cost less than 1 Bitcoin within in the U.S. within the next 10 years. That's one thing. I think the S&P 500, actually an ounce of gold will probably cost at some point less than a million satoshis, 0.01 Bitcoin. Right now it's at 0.03. These things are going to go to zero, worthless. Um, yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Rajat, for this insight. Thank you, guys. We'll catch up in another video. Until then, thank you. Take care.